Thanks so much for joining us today, Meredith.
Thank you for having me, Valerie.
I'm so excited about this book and so excited for you, The Tricky Art of Forgiveness. Now, so beautifully written. What a fantastic story. Tell us, for the readers who haven't got their copy of the book yet, what the book is about.
The book is about facing up to the fact that even though you've been together forever, in this case, Diana and Will have been married for coming up to 30 years, that marriage is so much about compromises and making exceptions and putting, and often sacrifices to make that, to grease the wheels that make a marriage work. And I wanted to explore how you would feel approaching your 30th wedding anniversary, your husband's turning 60, you're empty nesting, you've done that thing where you've sold the family home, downsized to an apartment. But how does the rest of your life look? And I think that is specifically, I wanted to look at it from a woman's point of view. A, I am a woman. B, because I think often it's the women who do the heavy lifting with the child raising and the marriage compromises. And I wanted to look at how she would look at a future with Will. And in the unraveling of that, is then the reader then discovers that they've got unfinished business from earlier in their marriage that is coming back to bite them effectively. And she needs to make a choice. Does she stay with him? Is 30 years under the table enough of a reason to not split up and to face all those issues that women often do in their mid-50s, where you may not be economically independent in your own right, and you may not even want to re-partner, having looked after someone forever. I mean, I have to tell you honestly, I have 2 at home still. I have 4, but 2 at home. And I constantly remind them, the moment Bo turns 18, I'm not cooking dinner every night. I'm not putting the meal on the table. You guys can start figuring it out. All that sort of stuff, I guess, was, I was about to say festering, perhaps, percolating around, what the marriage is once you don't have that glue of children and work and those things that you've relied upon for decades.
And it's so interesting because there's this cafe that I go to, almost every day. And the clientele there, I'm surrounded by Dianas. And I want to go, have you read this book? Because you're in it. But, I think they think I was a bit weird. But this is not a spoiler. Can you just tell people what the inciting incident is, the thing that sort of sparks Diana's journey?
Okay, so they've just moved literally into the new apartment. It's a perfectly lovely apartment, surrounded by packing boxes, all that kind of stuff. And she's a bit shirty about it, to be honest, because Will is away on yet another business trip and she's left doing all the unpacking and getting their life sorted again. And she's unpacking a box of jumpers and sweaters and things like that to put in his drawer. And a fragment of a note falls out of one of his sweaters and it just has the words, "I forgive you," written on it in his handwriting. It's on hotel letterhead, but she's got no idea whether this is something that's old, something from the past, or whether it's something he hasn't been telling her about right now. And that sets in motion the whole relationship unraveling that goes on from the rest of the book. So that's sort of almost like a few pages in on chapter 1.
Yes. And so what sparked the idea? Why did you decide? Was there something, a particular incident in your life that triggered, I'm going to write about this?
Definitely not the note side of things or some of the other terrible stuff that happens in the novel, but definitely that feeling of being, in my mid-50s and thinking about those issues that I just touched on about what marriage is, what you want it to be, what it might be in the future. Will it change now when the kids all go? And as I said, I've got like kids from, what are they now, 14 to 31. So I've done a lot of parenting. And it's fascinating already. Like you talk about being in a cafe surrounded by Dianas. I've had so many women already go to me, we're 54 years this year. And there's always this sort of note of penance, like it is hard graft to spend your adult life with a single person. And I'm not talking about fidelity necessarily, but so much as the daily rub of being together. And not everyone, I mean, it's lovely when you hear about people, I've been married for 60 years and we're still madly in love, but I don't know if that's necessarily representative of most people's feelings around their long-term relationships.
And so in this book, you've got kind of like not two timelines, but you jump from the present, Diana's life now, and back to then when she was younger. And did you write them in that way, in that linear fashion, or did you determine Diana's younger life and her older life and then intersperse them?
No, what I did was I wrote a story plan. So it's only a new process for me. For those of you who are budding writers, like I've always been quite good at pantsing, and I've always with the novel before that, The Dressmakers of Yarrandara Prison, I did a very rough kind of who was going to do what to whom, and quite honestly, most of that got thrown out of the window by the time it became an actual book. So with this one, I knew I was on a really tight deadline as well for the publisher, so I thought I'll write a story plan and get the what the hell is it all about stuff, because as many writers know, you often get to sort of 30,000-40,000 words and run out of puff and go, oh God, I don't know what happens next. I just know where it has to end. So I had actually written the story plan from chronologically, as it were, as in I knew we're starting here, then we're going to the past, then we're going here, then we're going. So I actually did write it. I know a lot of writers write the present and then they write the past and then they interweave that, or if they're doing two different character points of view, they will write all of one character's points of view, all of the other's character point of view, and then interweave that. No, I actually like the whole feel of jumping through back and forth in time, or back and forth in character point of view. I heard someone say the other day, and it's just the best analogy for writers, I hope you like it. She said, when you're looking at structure, think about it like a mixed tape. So remember when we used to make mixed tapes?
Yes.
I mean, hating myself terribly here, but you would do a progression in the songs, and it'd either be linked thematically, or there'd be like, well, I've done a slow one here, so I'm going to go really hard and fast and boppy here, and that kind of stuff. So I kind of enjoy writing that way because it keeps me fresher, I think. I mean, ultimately, does it work on the page? Well, that's what the editorial process is for. But in terms of writing it, I think it's quite handy. And I'm doing the same with the one I'm writing right now. I'm sort of back and forth in different parts of their lives and different times and stuff as well. So that's kind of, how I like to write it.
And with this book, can you talk us through kind of like a timeline of the writing? How long did it take you, from conception to when you started writing to the first draft of the manuscript and so on?
So initially it started off as a completely different book. For me, I often have an image or a character in my head that sort of buzzes around, that sort of comes back and forth to me. So the character of Diana initially started off as a vision of a woman sitting in a cinema watching a movie on her own on a weekday, so there was no one else really in the cinema. And I thought, I wonder who she is, and what's her life and what's her story. So that's sort of where it started. And then when I started thinking about, when that sort of was percolating and fleshing out in my brain, we were just at the beginning of the pandemic, and there was all those really, and remember the days initially when people did really funny TikTok videos, or there was orchestras playing to pot plants in the auditorium, that kind of stuff. And I was thinking about the fact, because my eldest daughter lives in Edinburgh, not called Persephone like the character, and I was thinking about how people were really struggling with that sudden disconnection, physical disconnection from loved ones, and not being able to do anything really about that. And of course, that's when we all started doing Zoom and blah blah blah. And I was thinking about Originally, this shows you how ideas go in such a big arc. Originally, I was thinking about it being in like an epistolatory novel where they were emailing back and forth and sort of having those two different perspectives of mother and daughter and their different experiences, because my daughter's experience of COVID in Edinburgh was very, very different to what I was experiencing on the farm. We're in the middle of nowhere, so social distancing is what we do, kind of thing. It's a bit hard, you wave across the paddock. And then I started writing longhand, writing about this. I have those really cheap, I'm just looking at one now, those really crappy $2 scrapbooks. You just get at Officeworks or Office National or whatever. And I buy them in like blocks of 10, and they have a blank page on one side and a ruled page on the other. And that's kind of where I do all my drafting. The freehand is really, really good for your creativity. And I write things in different color pens, and I draw things, and I try and work out, I'm trying to get into the character's head. I'm trying to get into I'm not so much worried about structure at that point. I'm just trying to, who are my characters? Why are they here? What is the story type stuff? So I wrote about 30,000 words. And
longhand. You wrote 30,000 words longhand. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Got writer's cramp because we know who writes these days. And then I said to my agent, I'm writing this story, blah, blah, blah. And she went, don't write about the pandemic. I went, oh. She said, because by the time the book is published, the pandemic will be over. And, people probably won't want to, it'll be dated. So I went, oh, okay. But I was so engrossed with Diana by this time, because I have to say she's one of my all-time favorite characters that I've ever written. I wish I was like Diana. Wish fulfillment, Diana. And so I just went, oh, okay. And then I opened up a new document in Word. So off, because I'd kind of, I suppose, explored all her backstory and knew who she was and knew what the relationships were. And then I opened a new document and I wrote a tagline, a short blurb, like maybe 3 or 4 sentences. At that time, it was called I Forgive You. And then I just started, and then I just did, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And I kind of, when I do my chapter headings, I kind of go chapter 1, today, Meredith's point of view, or, chapter 2, 1995, Valerie's point of view. So I kind of keep track of where the hell I am, because as you know, when you're writing, it's very easy to go, well, what year was that? And then I just wrote, probably took me 3 months, and I just wrote a really extensive story plan, fleshing it out as I figured out what was going on. Some scenes would be quite well developed. Other ones would be something needs to happen here, like, that sort of sense of you knew you needed the beat of a different chapter or whatever. And then I wrote all of that and wasn't expecting it to be 30,000, but there you go. And sent it off to my publisher and said, just have a look at that and tell me if there's any gaping holes that she could see. Nope, all good, write it. So then I turned around and sat down and duplicated that story plan, but treated it as like chapter headings, so that I would go, what am I writing about here? Yep, great. And then I would just write that chapter, so it would unfold. So you sort of, the good thing about it is that you do all the heavy lifting around structure and plot points and pacing in many ways in the story plan, so that when you're in the actual document, in the actual drafting process, you are fleshing out those ideas. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't then go, oh, better idea than that, or it's really not working, or any of that kind of stuff. Or I had 2 chapters floating in The Tricky Art of Forgiveness where I didn't know where they were going to go. And I tried them as a prologue. I tried it here. I tried it there. In the end, actually, it got concertinaed into one chapter, but also only a scene in one of the later chapters. So it's not to say that this is some sort of foolproof method, and if you do this, your writing life will be so much easier. But it is easier in the sense that it's not so stressful, because you kind of know what happens next. You're not doing, when you write pantsing, the problem always is, well, what happens next? Why did they do that?
Yes.
I don't know, and you can spend a lot of time doing that, figuring out. Whereas that 3-month process, which is a lot of fun, I have to say, is highly creative, but equally the structural issues go away. And I would like to say too that the reason I did that is the very first novel I wrote, which was the second one published, The Making of Christina, that was 9.5 years. And I was
because you were pantsing?
pantsing. I had no idea. I had to stop and research. I wrote it the wrong way. I had to throw it out, rewrite, start again and rewrite, all that kind of stuff. And I went, who's got the time? Like, I don't want to write a novel every 10 years. I mean, every couple of years, but not every 10 years. I'm not Anthony Dewar, I mean, but mind you, if you produce Cloud Cuckoo Land as after a 7-year process, then, all hail to you.
Yes.
But I'm not in that. I'm not a literary fiction writer. I'm a commercial fiction writer. And the name of the game is you must produce books often, yearly, every second year kind of thing. So it's a luxury I can't afford. So it was an experiment to see, could I write a novel like that? And so, then I wrote the novel, sent it in, and there was still structural error. Don't get me wrong. Like, it wasn't like every word was perfect. It was definitely ideas that had worked or didn't work or whatever. And then there was quite a stringent rewrite, because also I should say, because I was on such a tight deadline, I handed in the first draft. You never do that, like, right? Unless you're on contract, you're allowed to. But I handed in the first draft, so I knew that I hadn't even read it. I was on such a tight deadline.
You hadn't even read it.
Hadn't even read it. I just handed it in. I went, I haven't even read this guy's soz, and and so there was a structural edit, of course, and quite an intensive round of. There was a structural, then there was sort of a structural / copy, then a copy, and then the proof, and so on and so forth. So go to woe. So I think I wrote that story plan, in 3 months before Christmas of what year are we in? 2020. I wrote it in that end of 2020, and then I wrote the novel between January and. Oh no, it wasn't. It was a bit later. It was maybe March and June.
Okay.
And then the editorial process, 2021 and 21, and then the official editorial process was between that June and Christmas last year.
Yeah. Now, I just want to highlight to listeners who are newbies that Meredith is an experienced author, and therefore handing in her first draft is something that she can do. But if you're brand new, do not hand in your first draft. Correct, Meredith?
Also, the other thing to bear in mind is that I was writing before I wrote novels. So I used to write a literary column, as you know, and I was writing to deadline every single week, to deadline and word count every single week. And like you, I was reading a lot of books all the time. You had to really be disciplined about the reading, and then, then sort of filtering that all into a comprehensive and cohesive document. So I think when you listen to people like Jane Harper and stuff like that, anyone who's got a journalism style background or a freelance writing background, in one sense has the advantage of knowing how to edit their own work. So even though I say first draft, I'm not like I'm writing at the moment. I always start my day by reading what I wrote the day before, or starting at the top of the chapter where I want to make sure that the flow into that next chapter is working. So my first draft is probably very clean compared to other people's first drafts.
A brand new.
So please do never hand in your first draft.
Now, I want to backtrack a bit, because after the first 30,000 words and then you got the go-ahead effectively, did you write the rest also longhand? I'm still stuck on that.
No. Life's too short. The other, longhand is really good for just getting the creative flow, just to figuring out what you're doing, and you can figure out all those tiny little details about the character. Anyone who's read my work would know that I don't really give you a lot of clues as to how the character looks, unless it's through another character's eyes or it's germane to something that to do with their personality. But I'd give you a lot of gestures and tics and speech patterns and things like that to kind of try and give people a sense of the style of that person. For instance, Diana is incredibly droll, and even when life,
the ladies in the cafe, honestly.
Maybe it's an age and stage thing, but so even when her life is going pear-shaped, she still manages to find some humour in the situation. There's a line in there about when her brother-in-law daughter-in-law who's very touchy-feely and she can't stand it and she doesn't find him at all attractive either, so it's a bit repulsive. And he touches her and she says to him, have you not heard of #MeToo? Like she's that kind of person. Rather than say piss off or whatever, sorry for the language, she just like has this way of speaking. So that time of that free writing is very much the time for problem solving. And even when I'm writing, like on Word, so I don't use Scrivener or anything, I just type it in Word, is I will, if I'm really stuck, I will pause and start drawing and scribbling and, doing that thing a little bit to let unblock that part of my creative brain that needs help. And sleeping on it's always good too. Like I have a problem here. I don't know what Valerie's going to do next. Go away, we'll go for a walk, garden, bake a cake, sleep on it. And it's amazing how often, as I'm sure you've heard 50 million writers say, it will come to you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So all in Word, love. I don't handwrite. I don't handwrite my novels.
That's insane. Some people do, and I don't know how that's possible. But I get what you mean about getting that creative flow going, because it does loosen things up. Now, in terms of your kind of like your year, do you structure your year in a certain way, because you're currently writing your next book, so that these months are for the first draft, these months are for my edits, these months are to do promo, these months are to start the next book, and have you typically always got the idea for the next book, while you're doing the previous one?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got the next book already. So I'm finishing one hopefully in the next 2 days, due on Monday. And already the next idea is formulating and having conversations with me about what that's going to look like. So I just jot a few notes down and go, oh yeah, that's you've just reminded me. I wrote a note last night about solving this plot scene problem while I was cooking dinner. Oops, must go back to that. But yeah, yes, I structure my life. I'm a very disciplined person. And if I would say, when you look at all the writers who are producing quality work consistently, it's what Di Morrissey calls bum glue. It is sitting down and being disciplined. I was usually after a couple of days, I start my week and I'm right, a couple of thousand words, no worries. And then I'll usually hit a patch like Wednesday where I go, I don't want to, when I get all really and, easily distracted and all that kind of stuff. So that, but I have an Excel spreadsheet, which it keeps me accountable for. And I know a lot of writers do, but, you have that spreadsheet that says you need to write X amount of thousand words this week, tra-la-la, and you keep track of it so that you're constantly pushing yourself to go, I only have to write another 203 words to make my word count for today. Come on, sit down, do it.
Okay, what is your word count? No. So on the Excel spreadsheet, I'm fascinated by this. How is that divided up? By a daily thing or a weekly thing? And what is your goal for each day or week?
So when I start a new book, I will set up a spreadsheet, and typically I'm on contract, so I know when it has to be handed in.
Yes.
And I know roughly that I need like 10 to 12 weeks if I want to keep my sanity to write that. I'm not talking the story plan now. I'm actually talking writing the book. Yeah. And then I just divide 100,000 by the number of weeks I have. I divide that number by 5 days a week, knowing that later in the process that will become 6 days a week, because something always goes wrong. Sure. And so, I'll have like week 1 commencing whatever the date is, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, 2000. And then I keep track of starting word count, finishing word count, what I wrote that day. And to be completely nerdy, I also then rank my days. So if I have a day where I blow it out of the park and it's a 3,000 something or other day, that might be my best day. So that's 1. And then I start ranking my top 10 days across all those weeks. And that might sound really bad, except what it forces you to do is then you go, if I just wrote another 300 words, this would be my 10th best day out of the whole writing process. And so it's part of my forcing myself to stay in the chair, you see.
Yes.
And so I'm looking at over there, but it's actually not on the screen. But if I look at that screen and I can go, I don't feel like it, all the usual thing we tell, I'm tired or, whatever. You sit there and go, it's only another 300 words. Come on. And
Yeah.
so it forces me back to the moment. And I have a timer on my phone. So I've forced myself to write in 30-minute increments, get up, have a
Oh,
break as well. So because you can't sit all day. This is the
yes.
writer's nightmare. Everyone complains about backs or knees or hips or whatever's. So I force myself to get up every 25, 30 minutes and go for a 5-minute wander, hang a load of washing on, make a cup of coffee, whatever, or even just go and stand out and not look at a computer screen for 5 minutes. It makes it easier to have the energy to write for an entire day rather than like normally 3 or 4 hours. You're like, oh, I'm bored, I'm tired, whatever.
Yes. Wow. So does that not stress you out to have a 25-minute or 30-minute, whatever timer, and then you're in the middle of something that you're really going for it and writing rise, and then you're thinking, oh no, it's going to go off any second.
No,
Doesn't
no,
that
no. I
stress
just
you out?
ignore it. No, I just ignore it. If I'm right in the middle of that, oh, finally I've got the brainwave moment. No, I don't.
Right.
I'll keep going just to get that to happen. But no, I mean, but if you're sitting there going, oh, some days the words just fly off your fingertips,
Yeah.
and other days it's like drawing teeth, but the weird thing is, you can go back and read. As I said, I go back and read what I wrote the day before, and I could have had a shocking day where every word was like drawing blood, and you can't even tell on the page,
Right.
even though for me it felt terrible. And other days you can write like the winds in your sails, and it's not necessarily better, and sometimes it's often worse. So there's that element of it. And yes, I do block out. So for instance, I'll hand this novel in on Monday. I've got 3 to 4 weeks off before I'll have a conversation with my editor about the structural problems.
Yeah.
Of course, there won't be any. And then I'll go back to rewrite it. So it's very so in that time, in this particular break time, I will actually be doing last year's tax because I haven't done it yet. So, real world problems. But I will also take the time to start writing out this next novel story plan and start to get that on the page. And in the gaps in between the editorial process, because as you well know, it's structural, copy, proof, finals, there's usually a 2 to 4 week gap in between each of those stages. That's when I'll write the story plan for the next novel. And then that will then allow me to write some pithy blurb and tagline that I can send to my agent and publisher so that they can take it to the sales meeting and go, this is what her next novel's about, kind of thing. So it's very, very different to when you have your very first novel published, clearly, because unless you're someone famous already, it's so different. The process is very different when you're established in-house with a publisher and they would love you to produce a book a year or whatever it is. And part of that reason, though, I think it's really important for people who go, oh, I've got no hope, it'll never happen, is you're a known quantity. They know they can throw an edit at you and say 4 weeks, and you go, oh my Lord. Like the edit on Tricky Art was 4 weeks, and I did 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day to meet that deadline.
Oh my God.
Yeah, to get it done, because I couldn't. And the structural edit's the hard edit. That's when you're still really in the zone with that book, and you really have to answer all the hard questions about why did she do this, why didn't she do that, and By the time you get to copy edit and proofing, it's the smaller things that have slipped through. Like when we're doing the proofread for Tricky Art, suddenly I noticed, and I had used the word magic or derivatives thereof probably 15, 20 times.
Wow.
So that's when it's like the tide goes out and you start to see what's left on the shore. So, but that structural edit, you're still in the water. You're still like, how am I going to do this? So, but when you're an established author, they know you can do it. So there's less, in one sense, there's less pressure on you to produce a fabulous first draft, or the thing you hand in, in my case the first draft, than there would be when you're trying to prove that you can edit what they don't know about you when you're a debut is, can she edit her own work? And a lot of writers can't. And it is a completely different skill set to creating the work. And so it's a very different part of your brain, which is why I don't particularly edit as I write. I know a lot of people do. I know Michael Robotham does. I know Kylie Ladd does. Ben Hobson does. I can't do it like that. I need the flow. I need to have the energy in the writing. And then I worry about the fact that, sometimes I literally do write if I'm in the zone. And then Valerie did something, and I just keep going because I know that it's just a reminder, a placekeeper, as we call them, a placekeeper to remind me to think about what is she doing as she's speaking, or what is she feeling as she's speaking, or is there a disconnect between the words coming out of her mouth and what she really means or think, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it's
So when you are going through the structural edit and you get the feedback, do you think, oh, I can't believe I didn't see that? Or are you kind of really just going, oh, yeah, I'm glad they picked that up. I knew there was something wrong?
I think both. And I think let's not forget that even, all people might go, oh, all those successful authors, like you still have those couple of days where you're like, well, how dare they say that? They've hurt my feelings. And, all the stuff that you go in and you go, there's the two sentences, the jam on the whole sandwich, at the beginning of it, go, I love this book, Valerie. It's just made me feel this, and it was one and blah, blah, blah. And then there's like Rachel Johns put a TikTok video this morning, the 17-page report that goes, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But their job is to nitpick it. Their job is to, and once you get over your ego, because that's what it is, it's like when your feelings are hurt, well, grow up, sister, is you then have to go, well, do I fix all the easy stuff first, which is the obvious stuff you were just talking about, or do I drill in hard if they say, this is not working? And often I ease in by doing the stuff that's really easy, so I feel like I'm ticking boxes. And then I'll kind of, once I settle down, it's usually like day 3, I settle into the process. And again, I just divide the manuscript by the number of pages and go, well, I have to do X number of pages a day. It's not sexy or exciting. I think people in my own life, I have people going, but don't you just write when you feel like it? And you go, I'd never get anything done. When you're a published writer, you don't have those luxuries of how you feel or whether it's working or not working and all that kind of stuff. It's hard graft. It's just hard graft. It's just as much hard graft as anyone else's job. Okay, not brain surgery, but like it's not. You turn up and you sit at your desk and you work and whatever else is going on in your life, kind of thing. So you just can't afford to be a princess about it. And there's occasionally times when you push back really hard and go, no, there's a reason for that, and this is my reason. And even with this novel, there were several fights around, was that scene necessary? I would defend it. They would go, no, it doesn't fit Vonnegut's rule. So Vonnegut's rule being, it doesn't advance plot or character. And I'd argue, yes, it does. And they'd go, no, it doesn't. So you just it's a give and take process. But the best part about it, though, like I've made it sound really awful and painful, but it's collaborative. So it goes from being your idea, your handwritten scribbles, the vagueness and whatever that's gone into creating that floppy 100 plus 1,000-word thing. So suddenly you've got at least another set of eyes, or perhaps 2 sets of eyes in that very early stage going, yeah, but imagine if this happened or that happened. And you can go back and forth with the only other people in the world who know the book at that point and can actually advise you on who are emotionally distant from the book in a way that you cannot be. So it's a really, really valuable process. And even though I can whinge about my ego, I do also simultaneously go, slap myself around the face and go, sit down and just bloody do it, kind of thing.
All right. And of course, finally, what are your top 3 tips for aspiring writers who want to be in a position where you are one day?
Work hard, be prepared to work hard, be prepared to take criticism from those who know what they're talking about.
Yes.
Not it doesn't matter about your mum and your best friend and all of that, unless they happen to be, a famous writer. But you must learn to take criticism well, and you must learn to edit your work. It's a really critical skill to be able to look at your structure, look at your plot, look at your character development, look at your character arcs. There's a lot of moving parts in a novel. You can't necessarily do that all at once, but you must learn to do it, because it's in the editing. It's that ability to drill down into why something is or isn't working, pacing, language, whatever,
Yes.
that you really distill the essence of the story. The book that you hold in your hot little hands is thousands of hours of work. It's not, these people aren't tossing out novels in, over the weekend. This is hard graft.
I love it. Fantastic advice. And congratulations. Such a fantastic book, The Tricky Art of Forgiveness. Thank you so much for your time today, Meredith.
And thank you so much for having me, Valerie.